My first guest wrote a column in the Detroit Free Press that has a lot of people talking. Detroiter Eric Thomas wrote about the urgent need to preserve Detroit's black spaces as Midtown and downtown and some other areas of the city undergo major changes. He says there's a lot at stake for African Americans in Detroit. I'd like to welcome Eric Thomas, senior partner at Saga Marketing, to American Black Journal. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to see you. So let's start with this. Detroit is a city that is more than 80% African American. Almost all of our leadership is African American, both at the political and the community level. And yet, as you point out in your piece, it's a city where if you're African American, you can feel unwelcome in some places. Talk about what inspired you to notice that and then to write about it.
I mean, viscerally, I think I had the feeling and the gut reaction,
Yeah.
right? You find yourself in places where it looks so different. I mean, over the last 5 or 6 years, I grew up in a city where you could go anywhere and you could feel welcome, not about just the complexion, but in the tonality and the way people spoke and the way people carried themselves and the types of music. Now you can go in places and it feels almost entirely foreign. As people build new businesses to attract their friends and their family, they come from other places. And so it's almost like they've imported other cities' culture right into the heart. But those are cities that don't have the demographic makeup. And so intentionally or unintentionally, you feel neglected, disregarded.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there is the how do people treat people who are unlike them, right? If you skip all of Detroit, you come from Oakland County, you skip all of Detroit, land in the middle, you're going to act like an Oakland County person. But we have historically felt uncomfortable in the region around us. And so now the region around us is inside of us.
Is inside the city. So let's be clear. You're not saying that we should be unwelcome in the way that we respond to new people who want to be here. You're not saying that new people shouldn't come to Detroit, shouldn't want to be part of the place. You're talking about the way in which that happens and the sort of necessary attention to where you are, who you're around, and whose culture you might be having an impact on.
I think it's one of those, I think if you were to go to another country, if you went to India, and you were in a party and there were no Indian people there, I think you start asking questions. Am I doing something to make the Indian people feel uncomfortable? Right. Detroit is almost Africa, right? It's 80% African American. If you're in a place, and I don't even say you have to have 80% black people in that space, but if you have 2 black people out of 100 people, you have to start asking questions of yourself. What am I doing to make this space not welcoming? It's easy to not think about that because it kind of looks like where you come from, but you're not at home, right? And so going into someone's house, you kind of wonder where their family is. That's kind of what I'm thinking. It is strange to me. If I go to a place where I know there's a type of culture, I kind of want that culture. And it feels weird to say you love Detroit grit, you love Detroit hustle, as though Detroit grit and hustle doesn't come from a type of people. Detroit is not a gritty urban landscape. Detroit is full of gritty urban people that have had their mark on the city. If you love grit, if you love hustle, if you love creativity, if you love sound and music and soul, you love people, not buildings. And so in order to preserve the rich cultural, spiritual history of the place, you have to have those people in there.
Yeah. So when you say preserve black spaces, talk a little more about what you think that means, how we do that, and how that might change this dynamic that we see unfolding.
So I think there's 2 different things to think about, right? There are places that are culturally black, right? You talk about like Shrine of the Black Madonna, you talk about Baker's Jazz Cafe. These are places that are culturally, richly black. And then you have other places where they might be new, but they're in a city that is 80% black, and so they should have at least appreciation for the types of people that were there before and are still there. If there are over 200,000 middle-class Detroiters, which there are, your spaces don't hold 200,000 people, so there could be at least a representation of that community. It's not saying, like, Detroiters can't afford what you have. There are Detroiters. And so when we talk about preserving spaces, patronizing, supporting, celebrating, including is important.
Yeah.
And then when we have new places, what are you doing that reflects back into the community to say, we love you, and it has to be more than just Motown. I think everybody's excuse, they just turn on some Motown and assumes that's all you need.
Yeah, we'll show up, right?
It's like, bro, that was the 60s, right? There are things that have happened since.
So in these new spaces, you do see a lot of folks struggling with the idea of where they are and who should be there. If you had advice for a store owner, a restaurant owner in these sort of new parts of the city with new people, a quick list of things that you thought they could be doing different, what would it look like?
I think, you want to hire from the community, so the people who are the face of your organization connect with the community. I think that has to be more than security guards. I think people have decided that the only way they're going to include black people in their spaces is get black
To
security
guard the
guards.
merchandise,
right?
right?
Keep your cousins out of here, right? It's like, chill. I think that I think one of the main things to change the tone of a space is to change the music in the space, right? Like, what does it sound like? What does it feel like? Is there hustle? Is there bustle? And then get with people who have had long-standing understanding of how to make people feel welcome. We have hair salons. We have places like Savannah Blue that have incredible staff that come right out of the community. You can't tell me you can't hire and create great service when I have seen it work. So at some point, you need to create there is a restaurant association, right? There are co-ops of stores and facilities. The question is, who is doing it well? How do we create collaboration with those people? And then how do we share a workforce that makes us all feel included? And I think it really comes down to that. So we can have real conversations, real banter, and feel really safe inside of those places.
Yeah, I also feel like one of the things that needs to happen is that some of the new folks and new businesses that are locating in the city need to experience the parts of the city that they're not experiencing, right?
Yeah.
Don't just skip over everything and come to downtown or midtown. Maybe go to Livernois, maybe go to the east side, maybe go far west, and try to experience a little more of the city so that you're more comfortable with it to begin with.
And also, we could do a good job as Detroiters of welcoming people in, and talking to people and connecting with them and sharing our cultural resource, right? For us, our primary goal has to be to integrate successfully if it's going to happen. We've had a lot of situations. We've seen it all over the country. When an area begins to gentrify, quote unquote, which I think is not exactly what's happening in Detroit. There's space for 2 million people and 600,000 people here. But when those communities start to gentrify, especially in the city with the rate of renters that Detroit has, the people, even as the property values rise, the people will not benefit, and then they will have to leave. And so though you say, oh, we're trying to make this place better, the question that we always ask, because we've seen it for the last 100 years, is for who?
Yeah, right.
And you should ask the question as well if you're making the city better.
Yeah. All right, Eric Thomas, great piece, and thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It is an honor.